Peter, thanks for talking to us, and thanks again for being here at the IAG Academy Summit. So we just saw you were on a panel this morning where you spoke extensively about all the remediation efforts and various processes that are taking place in Australia at the moment with Crown Resorts and Star Entertainment Group. We've reported on that quite extensively, but what we're seeing now at both properties is mandatory carded play coming in and facial recognition, all sorts of different things coming in. Now, I'm interested in getting your thoughts on the implementation of that and thoughts on how that's all coming along.
Thanks, Ben. It's progressing the way that it needs to progress by the way the rules have been set. Unfortunately, regulators would prefer to have an outcomes-based approach rather than be told that the technology has to be a carded form of identification and play. We know that already that about 40% of Australians leave their cards at home when they choose to go out. They use wearable devices and they use their phones. But they're not able to do that at casinos because we have this idea that carded play is somehow the approach that needs to be taken. It's a shame because if you want people to make the best use of the tools available to them for harm minimisation, it would be best to give them the tools they're most comfortable using. And as I said, people are already showing they're not using cards anymore for other services, so why would we expect them to want to use them to play poker machines or table games at casinos?
Obviously, one of the outcomes that they're looking for is to enhance, tracking of players, being able to follow basically who's on the casino floor and for how long. Are there better means and better methods that you feel can be utilised to achieve that?
There are all sorts of methods, and it's up to the industry to bring it to the attention of the regulator to show them how else it could be done. We know, for example, that facial recognition comes with concerns that people have about privacy and what would happen to their data. There are other forms of biometric identification, such as palm readers. So palm veins technology is being used by Amazon in their Whole Foods business in the US for people to pay for their goods, so they don't need a card when they're doing that. All you need to do is have your identity confirmed initially, and then you can link that palm vein process to a credit card. So there are other technologies are there. It'd be a shame if we were unable to introduce them into casinos because of some rule about a mandatory use of an old form of technology.
Interested to get your thoughts on the whole issue of cashless gaming. I mean, the carded play is obviously linked to cashless as well. Yeah. But what are your thoughts? I mean, this is mandatory as well in casinos, and we're probably going to see it in pubs and clubs as well pretty soon. Your thoughts on cashless?
Cashless has been coming for some time, and the industry needs to accept it anyway because people under 40 don't carry cash anyway. So if you wish to have players come to your casino and be interested in playing with a product that's there, allow them to do it in a cashless way. It's being required for harm minimisation reasons, but it's actually commercially sensible anyway for the industry to go cashless because that's what the community is doing anyway.
Very much more broad, a very general question for you, Peter. Obviously, we've got the operators, Crown and Sydney, in all states in the middle of a pretty extensive remediation process. Generally speaking, from your outside observations, how are they going?
As an outsider, it's always difficult to tell. We start with Crown Melbourne, we know that the special manager, his term finishes at the end of this year, and he's been doing 6 monthly reports that have been made public, and it's fair to say those reports seem to suggest that Crown is doing a good job in its remediation. He also provides a private report to the regulator, and we don't know what that says. Let's assume, though, that it doesn't contradict what he said in his public statements. So I think Crown is heading in the right direction, though I think the major concern I would have for Crown Melbourne is whether or not the special manager believes they can continue to go in a positive direction once he's no longer involved. So Crown needs to think about confirming to the special manager that they've put in place processes and procedures that will stand them in good stead once the special manager is not there. With respect to the other operators, it's a bit more difficult to tell. Star Sydney is more complicated because they don't actually have a licence. So Star is not actually running the casino. So it's more difficult to know how they're going because it's difficult to see how a regulator can actually be satisfied to give them the licence back when they're not actually running the casino. So theirs is a more complicated story, made difficult by the way that the licence has been suspended. I get a sense that Queensland and Western Australia and independent monitors, or whatever the titles might be at both those locations, seem to be satisfied with the direction those properties are going, but there is a shortage of information from those two jurisdictions to be absolutely certain that they're going okay. I think, though, the lessons have been learned by the casino operators, so it would be extraordinarily foolish of them not to be remediating the way they ought to, so you'd expect that they're doing the right thing to get their licences back in an unencumbered form.
Do you think that the regulators have ultimately a preferred outcome to how this will play out? And what's your thoughts on potential timelines for when these special managers and those people sort of running these casinos at the moment might step aside and things go back to some sort of normalcy?
To answer the first part of that question, if I'm the regulator and I've got an option between granting a licence back to Crown or Star in an unencumbered form or having to go through a complete new licensing process, I know I'd rather be able to give the casino licence back, but you'd have to be absolutely certain that you're satisfied to do so. But the better outcome for the regulator is for Crown to get its licence back or for Star to get its licence back in Sydney, but of course only if they're satisfied. So that's what they would prefer to see as the outcome. With the special manager in Victoria, we know that the expiry date for his term is the 31st of December this year. We know he has to provide a report to the VGCCC and that they have a limited time frame to respond, and I think the date they have to make a decision by will be the 14th of April 2024. So that will be done and dusted by then. The only problem would be if the special manager gives a report that is uncomplimentary to Crown, and as I said, so far it seems unlikely that he'd say that. But if he gives a report that's satisfactory, then we can expect the VGCCC will make its decision by the 14th of April because the law requires them to do so. I think the Star in Sydney is running behind Crown. The inquiry was behind, the suspension of the licence was behind. So I think it's another 6 months away after Crown Melbourne at the earliest, I think, before the New South Wales regulator could come out with a decision that it's satisfied. It's not bound by that time frame, but just the amount of work that both operators need to do suggests to me that if it takes Crown 2 years, it's going to take Star about 2 years as well, and they were running a bit behind in the timing, so I imagine that their licence, should they get it back, would probably be mid-2024, maybe September, maybe 12 months' time from now.